Awesome. Thank you so much. So my name is Christine Hess, and I am the Executive Director of the Nevada Housing Coalition. So first of all, I would tell you, I really appreciate all the generous shout outs, but I will say that to me, the success of this conference is actually because of everybody that showed up. So really, to me, that applause should be for all of you, because as we know, it's about people and connecting. And while this having a conference in a pandemic has been certainly a challenge, it's amazing that it forces us to include everyone by having this opportunity with the hybrid option. So again, everybody, let's wave to turn around to the cameras, wave to our online audience. It's pretty incredible. We've had about between 60 and 80 people online both days, and between 120 and 140 of you here in the room. So it really does speak to housing and its importance. And we've been hearing that all along. You know, the time is now. We heard that this morning. We've heard it yesterday. And you'll hear it again on this panel, because the time really is now for housing here in Nevada. As we're going to hear from the treasurer and governor as part of their tour, they've been hearing about housing, right? We have these loud voices of our Nevadans who need housing. It's unaffordable. It's out of reach. And there's a lot of different reasons why. There's also a lot of different solutions, which is, I think, for me, the exciting part, because we're here for solutions. Additionally, we have the opportunity around unprecedented resources. I can't believe the timing, and thank you, Joey, for breaking the news for us from the National Low Income Housing Coalition, as he's on a call and coming up to the panel. And we hear that the amount of money, at least within the Build Back Better Act, right now proposed is $150 billion for housing. That's incredible. It really is. So we also have, and on your tables, you'll see here, the treasurer's like, of course you're going to talk about this, Christine. I warned him. But you'll see here that the Nevada Housing Coalition brought together a group of 70 stakeholders from around the state. And I would say 50 of them were very active. And we put together a recommendation to state leadership as part of Nevada Recovers that the state invest $500 million of its fiscal recovery funds from the American Rescue Plan Act for affordable housing. I'm not going to go into details. You can see it here. There's a download now. Of course, if any of you like tap it with your finger, it doesn't work. It's for the website, but you can reach our online version on our website and actually see the process that the task force went through to get to this recommendation. There's 4 buckets of funding: multifamily, preservation, affordable home ownership, and land. Things identified by the task force that runs a gamut, actually, just like this stage: healthcare, economic development, affordable housing, developers, nonprofits, advocates, private sector voices, all coming together saying, this is the investment that we think we can make, that the state can make for long-term progress for affordability for our Nevadans, a sustainable solution. And as I've collected ideas, people reach out and say, awesome, we have this idea. And I'm like, great, that's awesome that you told me, but actually you need to tell the treasurer and the legislature and the governor, and you do that through nevadarecovers.com. I don't know if any of you have been in the room, but they really are listening. So I say, submit your idea. And if it matches, you know, we'd love your support. Also support our recommendation and talk about how your idea can come to the table. But there's only 2 days left, October 31st, to submit your ideas online. So make sure you do that, and don't count on us and our plan to just be your advocacy voice. Do it for yourself as well. And we heard about that this morning as well. Unprecedented resources. Can you imagine, you know, $150 billion from the federal government coming for affordable housing? And that will definitely be coming to Nevada, some of it, if it passes. And then additionally, the American Rescue Plan Act funds. I don't know how much we'll see, but I guarantee you we're going to see some for affordable housing, and that's really exciting. So thank you, by the way, task force members. I have a lot of task force members. If you're on the task force, can you just raise your hand in this room? Awesome. Thank you. Really appreciate everybody's time and energy and patience as we went through that process. Finally, and really where we're here today, I think is, to me, kind of, I think of the third exciting opportunity. We have an unprecedented, well, probably not unprecedented, but I would say we have an incredible attention and focus by our leadership on housing and housing affordability, affordable housing. It's awesome. We need that. And so it's really exciting. We're going to kick off the conversation today. I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves first, but we'll be kicking off the conversation with the treasurer. And then it's my pleasure to bring you just these distinguished guests and their thoughts. And I'm excited to hear their thoughts alongside you. So first, I've asked everybody to provide their name, who they're with, and then to answer kind of our housing theme, what housing is to them. Which also, I guess I was sitting there going, oh, that means I have to answer the question. And housing is, to me, I think as I go through here, housing is community, but housing is human. It's about the people. That for me is what resonates with all the work that you all do. I think it's being centered on the people that we're serving. And again, there's so many solutions and the people's needs are so many, but that's what I'm trying to center on.
Well, thanks, Christine. Hi, everybody. I'm Zach Conine. I have the pleasure of being the 23rd treasurer of the great state of Nevada. And to me, housing is a human right. And anything that we can do at the state level, at the community level, in order to make sure that individuals are housed is good work, right? We know that housing stability leads to economic stability. We know that opportunities often come when folks aren't worried where they're going to lay their head. And so that's our work in the Treasury. That's our work in the government writ large. And I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. My name is David Goldwater. I represent the Leading Builders of America as a government affairs professional. And to me, housing is a human right. When framed as a right, I think it shifts all our mental focus and where we perceive housing as a priority as citizens and as human beings. So it's something I know my clients feel is important, and it's something I have been working for a long time, and I feel is important as well.
I'm Michael Brown. I'm in my third year in Governor Sisolak's cabinet. On my second assignment, I was head of the Department of Business and Industry for 9 months, and now I'm the state's economic development director. In a state where the first line of our state anthem is "Home means Nevada," housing is an absolute priority for all Nevadans, and it's home base and for everyone. And I agree with what the treasurer said. It is a basic human right.
Hello, I'm Audra Hammernick. I am the president and CEO of Nevada Hand, and we are a nonprofit affordable housing developer in Nevada. And to me, housing is essential. We're getting over 2,000 calls a day right now when we have 0 vacancies for people that need affordable housing.
Hello, my name's Steve Aichroth. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm the administrator of the Nevada Housing Division. And I'm going to go a little sideways here. I'm going to say housing is passion. We have a dedicated crew at the state who partner with all these folks up here to really try to drive affordability through the state of Nevada. And every person on my team, that's what they live for and that's what they do. So we're very appreciative to be here.
Good afternoon. I'm Teresa Bryce Bazemore, the president and CEO of the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco. And of course, our territory is Nevada, California, and Arizona. And thank you for the opportunity to be here today. To me, housing is about something that each person is entitled to have. It's something that is about having a clean, safe place to be, to think about in terms of where you can call home. And it's about families, it's about community, it's about where children can be, where they can thrive and grow up to be great adults. So that's what it means to me.
Hi, Bill Brewer. I'll get this up here. Bill Brewer. I'm the Executive Director with Nevada Rural Housing Authority and feel like the country bumpkin on this esteemed panel here, but appreciate this opportunity. I've really struggled to put what housing is in just a word or two because it means so much, but I finally settled on security. We talk a lot about the housing spectrum and our programs at the Housing Authority strive to serve folks from homeless to home buyer. And that whole spectrum in between, there's a lot of steps in there, but security is part of that whole spectrum. If you are struggling financially, just the ability to have an address where you can call home, where you can receive mail, where you can put that address on an application, that's enormous. At the other end of the spectrum, it's how you build wealth, and it's how families really grow economically in this economic system. And everywhere in between, we're benefited by good, solid housing. And so that's what we strive to do, is to get people in housing and keep them there.
Lisa.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to join this panel, albeit virtual. My name is Lisa Bogard. I'm the president and CEO for Anthem, Nevada Medicaid. And to me, housing is health. We really know that there's a wide range of health challenges that are influenced by housing status and stability. So we've seen the correlation between housing and infectious disease, primarily during the pandemic, and how that really influenced the eviction moratorium. And so we also know that housing plays a role in chronic disease and is tied to injury as well as recovery. And we know that stable housing is necessary for people to do things that we take for granted, store medication, and prepare nutritious food. So I would say housing is health, because housing can really improve the ability to access healthcare. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. So just to give the audience an idea of how we're going to go today, I have asked the treasurer to kind of give us an update on the tour, crazy tour that he's been out and about in our state on. But also this conversation today is meant to be a discussion. So I have a list of questions, and then I've asked the panelists to kind of weigh in and dialogue on the questions as they see fit. We're not going to be going down the line asking every single one the same question, but just as it makes sense and they have something to offer in terms of insights. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Treasurer Conine.
Well, thanks so much. And I wanted to start before we talk about the Nevada Recovers listening tour, just to say thank you, because typically the treasurer is not in a room like this. You've all been very welcoming, specifically Steve at Housing and Christine have been very welcoming at our efforts at trying to make things better. We care about housing for a lot of reasons in the Treasury, but the biggest is, as the state's chief investment officer, we know that investments in housing are the most likely to provide returns for Nevadans for generations, right? Housing creates that generational wealth that Bill was just talking about. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, we started looking for ways where we could preserve and protect housing. Even before that, our Board of Finance has put out more affordable housing dollars to both create and retain affordable than we ever have in any other 2-year period. That works because of the housing division, Steve and Michael Holliday and the rest of their team, and we're happy to support it. When the pandemic started, the word was stay home and stay safe. And that's difficult to do if you don't have a home to stay safe in. And so we worked to make sure that we had forbearance options for Nevadans before they were available nationally. We worked on the first eviction moratorium, and then quickly from there started working to make sure that landlords and homeowners would have access to resources. We worked to set up with Clark County and the Rural Housing Authority and the Reno Housing Authority what would become CHAP, right? A program that, while I think we all wish would be faster in getting the dollars out the door, is at last count the 12th most effective program in the country, right? Faster than many other states with many more resources than ours. And I'm sure Steve could tell you there aren't that many people at the state level who work on housing each and every day. We're able to do those things partially because we are simply in Nevada a little bit more persistent when it comes to getting things done. When we realized that the rules around the housing dollars weren't as effective as they needed to be, instead of simply complaining about them, we reached out to Treasury and we got them changed. So we were the ones that led the way to attestation coming back into check. And so all of that became the basis for the beginnings of the conversations that Christine referred to around housing through the Every Nevadan Recovery Framework, and then the Nevada Recovers listening tour. I'm sure all of you have heard this spiel before, so I'll give the short version. But the state's receiving about 107 different buckets of funding for different things that totals about $6.7 billion. Now, to set expectations, the needs of the state are much greater than $6.7 billion. We've got within those 107 buckets, 1.2 or so is going into K-12 education. 1.2 or so is going into K-12 education. A little bit more than $1 billion goes directly to the counties and non-entitlement units in cities around the state. And then there's money for childcare, there's money for transportation, there's money for housing and various other things. And so our work is to make sure that those dollars are invested. And the governor said it best when he said spending is easy, but investing is hard, right? And so in order to invest, as your state's chief investment officer, I can tell you the first step is research. Figure out what is out there. And so we committed to a 75-day, 75 event listening tour. Well, the tour is over now. It was 78 days and 123 events. We talked to about 50,000 or so Nevadans directly and indirectly, and got feedback from a large number of them on what was a priority for them, how they could build the Nevada we deserve. I'm grateful to groups like the one Christine put together, that working group, because that input is much more thoughtful than simply, gosh, we need more housing, right? Because I think everyone would agree we need more housing. It's the how that I think we need a lot of work on. I see a lot of friends in the room who have submitted proposals, and I'm thankful to all of you for taking the time to do that. The work from here is complex. So the governor and the legislature will be able to take the research and the administration information that we were able to get, and we'll work to connect those buckets to different needs around the state. Even right now, we've had some success, and I don't want to steal Director Brown's thunder, but his team put together an EDA grant that got, I believe, $1 million, Director, and $1 million in initial funding in order to keep working on that. That's one of the 107 buckets. And that process took weeks and a lot of people working on it. So we'll be doing this for quite some time, but we're grateful to the partnerships and the input from everybody in this room, and certainly always encourage you to reach out and talk to us and figure out ways that we can build as much housing as we possibly can here in Nevada.
Great. Thank you for that update, Treasurer. And thanks for all that hard work. The listening by our leadership is fantastic and appreciated. So we're going to get started here with some questions. And when we talk about affordable housing and we talk about supply, of course, always comes up. I wanted first to ask the question of our two affordable housing experts up here, Bill and Audra. And Bill, maybe I'll kick it off to you first as also my board chair. Thank you, Bill. And also Bill represents a rural perspective and of course, a public housing perspective. And Bill, how do you think we should or could be advancing affordable housing in light of these unprecedented resources and unprecedented times?
That's really a great question, Christine. I appreciate that. And it can be challenging. And I've wondered how we could continue this conversation. And I think that's really the point. Amongst other things, we need to be wise in the use of this incredible investment. We need to think about things maybe not in the same old way, but how could we do things a little differently or better or more effectively or efficiently? I always try to remember too that efficient does not necessarily mean effective. And so we must keep that in mind. But one of the things we really must do, I believe, is to continue the conversation. We hear this great news and we sometimes are prone to go back and go, man, things are good, we're going to be okay. And we stop pushing, and we can't afford to do that. In fact, what we're seeing right now is the result of some tremendous advocacy on the national level that is bringing some real fruit to places like Nevada. It's wonderful. But we still need that same advocacy at the state and local level to really bring some effective change to affordable housing in Nevada. Excuse me, just a couple of things. For example, locally, there are some things that local governments can do that would speed up the development of housing. If they change the way that they issue permits, for example, to speed up that process, we could get more things into the hopper. If we looked at things that would incent more affordable housing, such as decreasing setbacks or changing the zonings or allowing for accessory dwelling units, those kinds of things really begin to add up and make a difference. And that won't happen locally unless you go to the local government and begin to advocate for that. So I really would encourage that strongly, which will help us get this thing into high gear.
So the three things that we're really watching right now are the ARP dollars, the infrastructure bill, and the reconciliation bill. So on the infrastructure side, we're really hopeful that it will provide bonding authority and other types of incentives for folks that need infrastructure to keep those folks out of our Michael's pot of taxes and bonds, because we want them in the affordable housing world. Right. So infrastructure goes through. If they have, a lot of us are thinking about high-speed rail. So I was at DC with the Metro fly-in recently, and the person that was there representing Brightline, the high-speed rail, I mean, we were literally sitting at a table just kind of laughing like, oh boy, I really hope that you're able to get some of those bonding authority out of infrastructure and you stay out of our work. And thankfully she used to work for Nevada Hand, so she totally gets that. So that's infrastructure. Reconciliation, there's two really important things that we should be watching in the affordable housing world coming out of those bills. One is $202 for capital dollars for elderly. The really cool thing is it's coming with a Pratt contract. Pardon me, it's not coming with a Pratt contract. It's coming with a project-based contract directly with HUD. And this is a big deal for us that run those projects right now. It means that a lot of the HUD rules and paperwork that we have to deal with would go away, and we would actually get closer to fair market rents for those units. So that's a big deal for the elderly world. And then Section 811, also same thing. That program was a bricks and sticks project. Then it came to Steve as a rental assistance project, really hard to use. Practically impossible to use. And now it's coming back if it passes through reconciliation as a bricks and sticks project, again, also with project-based contracts directly with HUD, which is a big deal. So we're watching those three things. ARP, it's fascinating to me, for those of us who have read the interim rule, affordable housing is falling under public safety. So locally, what we've been hearing through Clark County, they've been the ones that have kind of been most forthcoming with actual semi-guidance, and I'm air quoting that because I don't want to talk to them, for those of them who are in the room, but they have given us more guidance than what we've seen from other than the interim rule. And so one of the things that we're thinking about is, does Davis-Bacon apply? Does Section 3 apply? Is it treated like home or isn't it treated like home? And we don't know the answers to any of that. And no one knows the answers to any of that. So it's really hard to plan for that and think it through. And as much as I can't believe I'm going to say this, I'm slightly disagreeing with the great Bill Brewer.
Oh, no.
I'm slightly disagreeing with you on something. And I think this is the very first time. My notes actually say, don't recreate a system that works. And right now, I think the way we have tax credits coming out, the system works. Low-income housing tax credits fund 90% plus of all affordable housing multifamily in the nation. We have a system that has a default rate of less than 1%. It brings oodles and oodles of capital into Nevada, right? We talk about public-private partnerships. This is a real private partnership. Public-private partnership. The people that are buying these tax credits would not be investing in affordable housing for any other reason except this program. So that's my only slight disagreement, that we have something that works. However, that 9% round that Steve and his staff administers, I think we ought to keep it precious. So I love that. It's a beautiful tool. If we can use these ARP dollars and not necessarily tax Steve's 9% round and let those normal projects go through, and have the ARP dollars stretch. And now I'm going to try to steal Michael's tax exempt bonds and generate 4% credits out of it. If we're using more this side of the house on bigger projects, the county's saying they want 5,000 units created out of $153 million. How are they going to do that without other resources, right? So they're really planning on stretching these dollars. And in my brain, that kind of falls in the tax exempt bond bucket. Just one more quick thing. The one big barrier that we also have to keep in mind with ARP dollars is it is not going to guarantee any of us affordable housing developers real estate tax exemption in the state of Nevada. Treasurer Conine has been terrific with the process. He's allowed us to submit a kind of a legislative note within the Nevada recoveries framework that reminds us all of that, because the only thing that's doing that right now is the home program. So we need to watch that, because ARP dollars, cool. It seems like it's going to be some interesting capital, but there's some also things we don't know enough about right now.
Great. Thanks, Bill, Audra. Before I move on, and we're going to still continue the conversation, I'm going to talk to you, Lisa, about this too. A really similar conversation here I have for you. The task force, as well as having a $500 million investment, $275 million of that for multifamily, was pretty intent on also targeting some of those dollars for those most in need. So for permanent supportive housing, it recommended at least 20% of those dollars be committed to that. Additionally, targeting below 30% AMI, area median income. So Lisa, this is the audience that you serve, and Anthem serves. You serve more than that, but you specifically in your programs. You know, Nevada has our country's worst deficit of affordable housing for our lowest income population, many of whom you serve. How do you think we can advance affordable housing from that perspective?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, perfect. It's a great question. So certainly as an organization, you know, we are committed to improving health and lives, and that means whole person care, including housing as an extremely important component of that. And so we've really taken the lead, a lead role in really addressing housing stability here in Nevada. We've spent years trying to think of innovative solutions and programs to build based on evidence-based practice, you know, to address housing disparities, and really that advances our mission, which improves health lives. So we've actually adopted the housing first approach, which is really guided in the belief that people, of course, need a place to stay, a platform for addressing, you know, other needs such as chronic disease, whether it be mental health, substance abuse, and many more. You know, the housing first approach really was launched with a wide range of initiatives that we really looked to connect Nevada Medicaid members with stable housing solutions. So I just wanted to take just a moment to share a few of those, because I think it's really important as we look and think about affordable housing options and what we're doing for our underserved populations and most vulnerable populations, that one size does not fit all. So we offer over 100 beds for just emergency bridge housing, and we offer that to Anthem members who are experiencing homelessness. We've also launched several prevention and diversion programs in partnership with community-based organizations. This is really important because, you know, when you're making a decision between, am I going to feed my family or am I going to pay my rent, you know, which one's going to win? So if we can provide some funds to be able to quickly address a housing crisis, we can prevent that homelessness from occurring. And that's been a very successful program. We're also rolling out shared housing programs, because again, that's both in Northern and Southern Nevada. And that is, we're addressing the the housing need, but also making sure that for people who perhaps don't want to live alone, they want to have a roommate. That's something that, really we can provide assistance, but while they're working on employment goals. So again, looking at that whole person. We've also partnered with Clark County. You mentioned the permanent supportive housing dollars, and that is been a very successful program, the Healthy Living Expansion Program, and we're happy to be a part of that. Additionally, we've also launched PadMission in Clark County, and that's a software program that really helps nonprofit housing providers to identify and work with landlords really who have affordable and available units and are willing to serve as partners. So this is really a valuable tool because it not only builds capacity, but it also fosters collaboration across the homeless service continuum. And then I would just say that we always want to look for creative partnerships, whether that's public, nonprofit partners. We recognize that many of our programs really rely on the success of building those strong partnerships, engaging with other key stakeholders. We're here to be part of the solution. And so we know that some of our most vulnerable members, their health is really reliant on making sure that they have affordable housing.
Thanks. I don't know if anyone would like to add, but I'm going to add, Lisa. I help with the Operation Home, and really Anthem support of that has been fantastic, but it really is a collaborative effort. And I see Susie in the back, Susie Vasquez with the Apartment Association. The landlord engagement and the private sector engagement in our solutions is really critical as we consider our shortage. We can't build it fast enough unless Audra and Bill can really work quickly. So we do need to engage also what exists and how we get access for those most in need. So thank you for that.
Can I say one quick thing on this? And it's not just about building it fast enough when it comes to permanent supportive housing, because we could build all day long. I see Lori here from Ovation. There's many other developers in the room. We can build it, but it doesn't mean that folks are going to have strong support services or rental assistance. So you're going to hear me beat this drum until it finally happens, but we've got to have, and we had folks from the Medicaid about tenancy services. We've got to have a way to pay nonprofits to be able to have them do these real wraparounds forever. Not for 12 months, not for 24 months, forever. And then we've got to have project-based Section 8. Now, Bill and Amy, you guys are doing a great job up north. The South, man, we've got to do better. And we've got to get a project-based Section 8 program for lots of reasons, but specifically for permanent supportive housing, or we're never going to get this off the ground.
I just want to say, preach, Audra, that is really awesome what you said, and I hope everybody was listening. We really need to do that.
Awesome, thanks. So as we've gone down the line, the private sector, our affordable housing challenges are an all hands on deck. And everyone who knows me knows that I say that a lot. So to truly move the needle, it includes the private sector. So David, representing the private sector and builders, developers, whether it's multifamily or single family, how do you think the private sector can really be part of the solution in these times?
Thank you, Christine. First of all, I've been working in space and state government in various roles for 25 years, and it's amazing to me that we have a conference room this big with this many people for affordable housing, and I think that's great. But before there was a conference this big, there were people in this space. Before there were ARPA dollars, before there were even bond dollars. People like Bill Brewer, people like Steve and Audra. And I could tell you as a lifelong Nevadan born and raised here, I'm grateful for their efforts long before we could fill a conference room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Audra. Thank you, everybody who's been working in this space. People I represent, really, affordable housing at its essence is a supply issue. And we've looked for ways not only to contribute and leverage the private sector to add to supply, but also identify kind of some of the challenges. And if you apply sort of a SWOT analysis, what are our strengths as a a private sector builder, it is on the supply. It is our ability to build. It is our ability to leverage. One of the things the task force has in there, for example, is down payment assistance programs. Down payment assistance programs not only address kind of a missing middle class transition to get people into homes, but it's also an incentive for developers to build a product class that doesn't exist necessarily. Think just a thought experiment. You know, if there's more people able to get into a $300,000, $200,000 home, there's more people willing to build that product, and that is something that's the kind of leverage I think the private sector offers. Some of the weaknesses that my clients have identified and the people with whom I work have identified have been mentioned before. We've built a system where we rely on fees and growth. I'm not going to comment whether that's good or bad, but I think one of my observations on the task force was eyes got a little bit wider as we started to understand how much just a little bit of cost in a home can add, and how each dollar that is added prices somebody out. And I put a list together. Forget all the NIMBY local government issues. Forget about the political incentives that the elected politicians have in not building affordable housing. These are just some of the fees. The multi-species habitat conservation permit, BLM fees, traffic fees, transportation fees, park fees, residual construction tax, public facilities needs, high input project fees. It is a long list. There's more taxes, there's more, and every time we're always looking for more and more things, and it takes longer. Identifying these, working together with our public partners and our elected officials to get these down. We all are working towards the same goal. These are the kinds of things I think the private sector wants to work in these kinds of public-private partnerships. I think there are things we can do. And then finally, on the threat side, doing this right, I think the treasurer's done a tremendous job listening. I think we've all done a fair job putting together some kind of plan, or at least something we could work with. Executing that plan is a threat, and we have to do it right, because if we don't do it right, I don't know what affordable housing efforts look like in the future. I always use the example, we can't just throw money at this problem. And I always say, how do we know? We've never tried. This time, I think we're going to throw money at this problem and cross our fingers it better work, because if it doesn't, I fear for what we have down the line.
David, this is Bill Brewer. Thank you very much for being here today. We really, really need that private sector perspective in all of these discussions. And I appreciate you going down that list of fees that go into the building of a home, for example. What else could local government do that would help incentivize the building of those entry-level kinds of homes?
Thanks, Bill. I think identifying some of are important. I think also speeding up the process. You mentioned that in your opening remarks. Getting things ready to go and organizing and consolidating our ability to provide what the local governments are looking for. I would love to see local governments reassess what they're truly trying to get out of builders when they build a project. What is it that the community wants, and identify those, find a place to fulfill those needs in a timely and efficient way, so we can get to a spot where we can put units and put supply out on the market.
Thank you.
One other quick thing on this is that one of my fears is that we're going to be told, yeah, go build affordable housing, but go build affordable housing plus blank. And that blank is scary, right? We've heard things like, you know what would be a great idea, Audra? Do affordable housing plus. Build me a multifamily building, but first build tiny homes and then have homeless people live in the tiny homes and then have them build the housing, build your apartment building. And then when they're done, you can sell the tiny houses and they can move in your building. Okay, all that sounds like to me is a really long time, right? That sounds like delay upon delay upon delay. And it's not like I'm not in favor of job programs, so please don't think that. But my goodness, like if you really want us to move, and we recognize that we have to have obligation dates by the end of 2024, and then we have to spend by 2026. So everybody's going to be having to pop a little bit to get things moving, plus buy land and get through zoning and all the normal delay stuff that you have to go through. So that's my one fear, is that it's going to kind of be added on to just go build and do good.
And just, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, all those things you said are true. And I think the private sector guys want to help as much as they can, but they want to do it voluntarily. The more you ask them or mandate that they do something in laws and it becomes too stringent and it becomes too tough and not flexible enough to fit a particular situation, I think the harder it is for the private sector to contribute to these things. We love the idea of those land trusts. That was a great idea. We learned a lot about it this conference, and I think that's an idea we can move forward on also.
Great discussion. And I would just follow up with, we'd like the private sector to do it voluntarily too. It just needs to happen, right? Affordable housing doesn't just happen though. And that's why we've got to push the conversation forward. And the other thing, I want to give a shout out to both Clark County and City of Reno. They have adopted measures as part of Senate Bill 103 from the 2019 session to incentivize development of affordable housing by having the ability to waive fees. So that is available to the local governments, and hopefully some of the other jurisdictions will be taking a look at that as well. So yeah, definitely great points. Michael, this one's for you. Love having economic development, of course, at the table, and Nevada's been having tremendous success and growth. However, the housing shortage and costs feel like they're rising to levels that could inhibit our future prosperity and certainly inhibit the ability for all Nevadans to feel it across the board. My friend Jane Pavick, she brought this saying from the Montana Housing Coalition: a home is where a job goes to sleep at night. So definitely economic development needs to be at the table, and you are here at our table. And my question, through your economic development lens, where would you start with the transformation of housing and affordable housing, considering these opportunities and the need we have right now?
Well, like I said, I joined the governor's cabinet. My first assignment was at Business and Industry, which had the housing division. Steve Aichroth educated me on these issues. They weren't ones that I was really familiar with, but I was approached by Nevada Hand and asked if we would support restoring the Nevada Housing Advisory Committee, which we did. And then worked with Steve on a variety of projects, and then got asked to be Economic Development Director. And not having a background in that, I turned to some people experienced in that. And I asked one of the persons who'd worked in this field for many years, I said, well, what do we do in the housing area? And the person said, oh no, that's community development. Economic development shouldn't be involved in community development. And it's like, that's not going to pass muster in the Sisolak administration. It's because the governor's view on economic development was the deals had to be larger than life. There had to be much greater benefit and spin, and we had to deal with downside consequences on it. Yvonne Kinsella, the new chief of staff, has signaled to the cabinet 4 priorities. First priority is the management of the pandemic. Emphasize management. We're out of the crisis mode. Pandemic virus has not gone away, but we need to just institutionalize the public health systems to deal with that, because it can't preoccupy everything else on the agenda. The second is the ARP dollars that the treasurer discussed. And the third item that the chief of staff outlined for the cabinet is housing. Now that's very significant. The fourth item was economic development and workforce. And so I've been asked to put my office into the housing space, which is why I'm here today, to better understand this. Couple things that I have done, I became economic development director, is I told my staff that we are not going to use the private activity bond for private sector economic development, except for possible infrastructure projects. But that remains with Terry Reynolds at the Department of Business and Industry. And those are his decisions, not mine. But then I went to legislature and put Terry Reynolds on the go-ahead board so that housing had a seat at the economic development table, and that's occurred there. So we're getting into this space. I have to say, coming out of the pandemic and the economic dislocation in Southern Nevada, is that we think there's about 50,000 hospitality, entertainment, gaming workers that are, because of accelerated trends, the pandemic accelerated every negative trend. We don't know that there's a job for them when they want to go back. And so we are very focused now on trying to attract the kinds of companies to Nevada that will absorb those workers without us having to have inbound people moving here to take a job, which would further exacerbate the housing issue. And so these do need to come together. The administration's made a commitment. I've been tasked with bringing them together and will welcome any ideas. I kind of serve also as the governor's fireman, you know, when there's a problem here, a problem there, my office kind of gets put into it. I welcome all ideas in this area. It is essential that we get it right. And my door is open. Thank you.
Yeah, that's so awesome to hear. And the coalition definitely supported getting business and industry on the board, Michael. So thank you for that. And that recognition of housing in the economic development space and the intersection of housing with all the different sectors, right? To hear it out loud that we're acknowledging that, I think is really important for us all here in the housing space. We're not in this alone. We're here working alongside all of our partners. So, and Lisa, you too there. I don't want to leave you out. So thank you too for all the work that you're doing in the health sector. So my next question, we're so lucky to have Teresa with us as well, joining us, traveling actually from DC, but based in San Francisco with the Federal Home Loan Bank. And Teresa's area of expertise is amazing. If you haven't read her bio, it's incredible. I highly recommend it. But in particular, from your perspective, Teresa, working over a region, and then of course in your previous experiences, what do you think is Nevada's biggest opportunity to transform its affordable housing? Is there one standout opportunity or combinations of factors?
So thank you for the opportunity to be here. And no one has ever suggested that my bio is interesting reading, but but I think, you know, the discussion here has been about the American Rescue Plan dollars. There's also additional monies that look like they're coming in. And so I think the big focus and one of the areas that we've been really focused on with the coalition is about capacity building of sponsors. And that's really important because so many of these projects need funds from a lot of different places. And so the ability to sort of pull all of those pieces together is incredibly important. Our bank was one of the initial funders of putting the coalition together. And a lot of that was about building that capacity. And so as we think about how we're going to best leverage these dollars, how we're going to best leverage any infrastructure dollars, because I agree that's going to be an important part of really using these funds in the ways that we can best use them. It's going to be important to have that infrastructure in place and the capacity in place. I want to commend the coalition for the working group. I saw a number of you put your hands up because I think it's going to take that time and effort to make sure that we're looking at the right ways to use those dollars. How do we, leverage low-income housing, tax credits, all of the areas that could bring some opportunities there. So, and I also want to add to what you said, Audra, and this is around the services that go with this. I mean, one of the things that we've seen, we've done a lot in terms of funding projects that help with homelessness. the services are an incredibly important piece of that. You know, when you think about sort of our affordable housing program, it's really gets to a private-public sort of partnership. I mean, our members who are depositories, credit unions, and so forth are the sponsors of these projects, along with the affordable housing developers. And then we come in to help bring some additional money to the table. And we're focused on how we can help over the next year in particular, help enhance and help you grow that capacity so that we have more opportunities to do more as those funds become available.
Thank you. And Teresa, I'm wondering if you can just speak a little bit to the opportunities even unique to Nevada coming through the Federal Home Loan Bank. And yes, thank you for your capacity building support to stand up the coalition. I have quite a few founding members here, Wells Fargo, Charles Schwab Bank, Federal Home Loan Bank, that came to the table for the coalition. Thank you so much. But can you kind of talk about the opportunities for Nevada specifically and uniquely with the Federal Home Loan Bank?
Sure. So one of the things that is new that we're working on, there's always been for each of the federal home loan banks a sort of fulsome, I guess, or the whole competition around affordable housing dollars was for the whole area. So for us, that would include projects from each of the 3 states. And one of the things that was changed recently in terms of the regulations that we have to work under is that we can now create a targeted fund. So think about the dollars this way. Right now, there's a 10% set aside of our net profits that go into affordable housing. We're able to sort of set aside a portion of that, and that money goes into down payment assistance. A lot of those dollars flow into Nevada to help with, you know, folks purchasing homes. But the rest of it goes into a competition for different projects where these applications come in. And as a result of the needs in Nevada, one of the things we have been working on, and I will say that Senator Cortez Masto has been a huge proponent of this, is that we wanted to create a targeted fund. And now the regulations will allow us to do that. So we're working with our regulator, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, to create a fund that would just be a competition for projects in Nevada. And our expectation is that we would be able to launch that for the competition in 2023. Because we're doing all the work to get that set up now. And that would also still allow for projects that are being sponsored in Nevada to be in the more general fund, but it would mean that there would be a certain number of dollars that would just be designated for Nevada. So we're really excited about this. I will tell you that getting this done, this will be the first targeted fund in the Federal Home Loan Bank system. So the one for Nevada will be. And so we're really excited about that. And thanks for the partnership to help kind of pull that along and bring that into fruition.
Such great news. Thank you so much. And yes, Senator Cortez Masto was absolutely critical in helping bring that and help make that happen. But it's exciting to see it coming forward. So thank you. So of course, we all know that government alone does not and should not shoulder the weight of affordable housing solutions. So this question, of course, Steve, is for you. As our state housing finance agency, you're of course at every affordable housing table. What do you need to be a successful partner and leader to advance affordable housing in Nevada through these unprecedented times, unprecedented resources, just beyond into the future?
Yeah, and thank you, Christine, for the question. And I'll take the second part first regarding leadership. And it should be very readily apparent to everyone in this room. And if it's not, I'm going to point it out. The amount of support that we get. You had a governor appear here live to talk about affordable housing. You have a state treasurer who dove into, he doesn't know how deep the water is, but he drove head first into housing. I don't think he's clunked his head on the bottom yet. And he just keeps going. We have a state legislature that has engaged tremendously over the past few sessions into affordable housing, more so than I can ever recall living in this state. You heard earlier yesterday from 2 of the 4 congressional representatives in the House. You heard this morning from one of our 2 senators. We have more support from a legislative, executive branch. I'll even throw the judicial in there because we work with Justice Hardesty on the creation of AB 486, and he dove in too. So you have this amazing group of leaders that are going to allow us to do what we need to do. Not every state housing finance agency has that ability. So that's really key for the first thing. And that leads to 2 other things that I want to sort of discuss. One is the partnerships. I often say, and this is a detriment and it's not really representative, but at the housing division, we don't do anything by ourselves. We can't accomplish what we need to accomplish without the partnership of Bill at NRHA, without the partnership of the Federal Home Loan Bank, without partnerships at Nevada Hand, and I can go on and on and on. Local jurisdictions. If Clark County is not engaged with us, they're not going to be as successful. We're not going to be as successful. We need those partnerships to be successful. And that leads me to my third point, which is Nevada is a small state. That's an advantage. It's typically a disadvantage when it comes to funding. We're usually very much getting small state minimums for funding. We're getting an inordinate amount of funding, unprecedented funding. We don't know, at Audra's point, exactly what the regulations and what's going to allow us to do this, and what we're permitted to do with this level of funding. But as the treasurer and governor's listening session has sort of brought out, that the small population relative to other states in Nevada is an advantage. You can, as advocates, engage. Try to do this in California. You're not going to be heard. Sorry, that's sort of the way it is. But here we can do that and we can react to it. And so I think that's really the key that we get and want to look for. I'll end on this note. This came up in conversation yesterday with somebody at Wells Fargo. We're all in the canoe and the federal government has given us a paddle, which we typically don't get paddles. Now we just all got a paddle in the same direction. And if we do that, we're going to make some serious inroads into affordable housing. Wow.
Awesome. I love working with Steve in the housing division, all the housing division people. Mayworthy Thomas, Dr. Mayworthy Thomas is on our board of directors, but their whole team is incredible. Thank you. And Lisa, it really plays on also what you spoke to, the collaborative effort, right, across sectors. And you guys are pushing that as well in the health sector. Silver Summit, they're here as well, engaged in housing. It's fantastic. Thanks for that. Treasurer, question for you. What does, and so we're talking about collaboration. Lisa mentioned it. Steve talked about it. You know, we've all talked about it a bit in certain ways, but what does successful collaboration and coordination look like to you for affordable housing as we come through these times? Because that's what it's going to take.
Well, you know, in the Treasury, we're pretty outcome determinative, right? An investment was successful or it wasn't successful. People don't often say, well, did you think you had a good idea even if you were wrong, right? That's not super effective. So in our world, successful collaboration looks like the most effective use of dollars to get out to build more affordable housing. It looks like fewer people who are homeless, more people who have opportunities to achieve their dreams, right? Through housing more transitional housing for people who are leaving correctional institutions, more transitional housing for people who are leaving domestic violence situations, more opportunity, right? That's the end game. And if we get there, then we've been effective. And if we don't, we haven't. And I think when we talk about collaboration, to some extent throughout this entire process, and I mean, you can hear on this panel how many different groups, how many different what traditionally would be silos in state and local government have been knocked down, or at least significantly diminished during the pandemic. And I think our work is to make sure that those silos don't recreate, right? So that the work that we're able to do, the collaboration between the state and the Reno Housing Authority and the Rural Housing Authority, Bill, I'm not sure how often you talked to a treasurer before this time, but Steve promised me the water was fine before I jumped in. But we need to make sure that those silos continue to be chipped away at, right? That we can continue working with the private sector and listen, right? And listen to when they say, hey, these fees and these other things that you're theoretically doing to support affordable housing are actually creating a barrier to affordable housing, right? I think we need to take people at their word and look for outcomes. I think if there's one takeaway that we've gotten through this entire process, not just on the ARPA side, but on everything we've done in housing, it's that it takes a village to build a village. And I think if we're going to keep doing the work, we just need to keep having conversations.
Can I add to that, Christine? Because the treasurer made one comment that I think is very poignant. COVID and horrific thing that's been occurring, continues to occur. You saw the in memoriam list yesterday, but COVID has created a situation very unique. And again, I think this goes back to being very unique in Nevada. We all got together via Zoom, but we all got together. And I've never had as much engagement, Bill, with your organization, with the Reno Housing Authority, with Clark County. And so if there's a silver lining, it's that this crisis has really brought forth the relationships and the partnerships that we need to have developed, and we should have been developing in the past, and maybe they weren't quite as developed as they should have been. So I'm really looking forward to continuing this engagement, building on those things that were actually created basically out of a disaster.
And Steve, if I can add on that, I think one of the other things that we found through the pandemic, and Director Brown and I ran a small business grant program effectively from a kitchen table and a spreadsheet. And we realized that sometimes bureaucracy at the government level is necessary, but sometimes bureaucracy exists for bureaucracy's sake, right? That it was a good idea when it was originally put into place 30 years ago. And we've never really had, I don't want to spill the beans on this, but there's not a ton of incentive for state employees to try new things, right? There's just, we don't have an incentive structure that does that. We don't get paid more. We lose elections, right? If we're wrong, there's not a lot of desire to take on new risk. But in a situation where that risk was existential, right? Where there was new risk and there were new potential opportunities, but also just massive pitfalls, we were able to try new things. And in trying new things, I think we quickly, rapidly advanced the pace of removing bureaucracy from places that didn't need to be. I think our job, right, broadly, and your job is to keep us accountable for this, is to make sure that we don't forget that. Right, that the passion and the terror and the urgency that we felt during the midst and the worst parts of the pandemic remains, because that is the urgency with which we need to address this crisis, right? And a number of other crises that are systemic around the state, right? That urgency is important, and you got to keep us honest and make sure that we retain that same level of urgency.
Well, I would like to add to that too. Those of us who work in the public housing sector and in the affordable housing sector greatly appreciate the receptivity that we see in our elected officials and in our state officials. Again, that's something we haven't always had. I've been doing affordable housing in Nevada for a long time. and have worked with the state bureaucracy quite a little bit. I've never had a conversation with the state director until Mr. Conine came in. We've never had conversations with GoEd until Mr. Brown got into his position. We've never had been able to call a director of the Nevada Housing Division and have a conversation. I'll email Steve and say, can I get a half hour of your time on XYZ date? He's always available. And that just hasn't happened historically. And so we are at a perfect place right now to take advantage of this incredible opportunity that's coming down the pike. So, and I just can't express my gratitude enough for the good people that we have in place right now.
The collaboration is critical to our success, and you hear it here. And I know we talked about it a little before, but I do want to recognize, because there's so many of us in the audience, or so many of you in the audience as our community service providers, the boots on the ground, getting the work done. I know I depend on you to help me make sure that you're getting what you need. So, thank you for your collaboration too. Teresa, I'd like you to start with this question, and of course, anyone else, please weigh in. And before we start, just a couple of rapid fire type questions. We're coming to the end, although I don't want this conversation to end. I love it. I'm so grateful for it. We've been talking about how the time is now for housing. We heard also this morning, and I see Tyrone is still with us. Thank you, Tyrone, our keynote speaker. Amazing, by the way, anyone who missed him, you have to go back and watch the recording. Really, really incredible. But the time is now for housing, but the time is now also for equity in housing and racial equity in housing. And we also heard, or excuse me, the question for you, Teresa, is, how are you at the Federal Home Loan Bank advancing racial equity and affordable housing through your policies, programs, and leadership? And I would pose that to anyone else as well that would like to chime in, but I wanted to start with you at the Federal Home Loan Bank.
So this is a huge issue, and it has been for many, many years. I can remember early in my career working on making loan products that were opportunities to expand home ownership in a sustainable way, that became ways for more people to have home ownership. And as a result of that, we started seeing an increase, but we've also seen situations where we've lost the gains, whether it was during the Great Recession, or now the concerns are whether we're going to see more of that during this sort of post-pandemic or time frame. And so we've been very focused on what can we do to make a difference going forward that will allow for sustainable home ownership, but it really sustainable in the way that not only is it affordable, but it's something that people can continue to have and build wealth. And we also see these huge divides in terms of the racial wealth gap. And a lot of it stems back to housing and the fact that so many people of color have not had the opportunity to own housing. So we just announced an initiative with the Urban Institute. It's a large research group out of Washington, D.C. I commend you to look at some of the work that they've done over the years in the housing sector. But the work that we're partnering with them on is going to be in four areas. One is on underwriting. So are there ways to think about underwriting? You think about all the people who are paying 50% of their income for rent, right? But you can't buy a house if your mortgage payment is 50% and it's the same amount. So but yet if you could buy a home with a low fixed interest rate, you could have that home, build wealth, and not have to worry about your rent going up every year. And we've seen how much rents have gone up constantly. And even over the year-over-year numbers are huge in Nevada. So when we think about that, are there ways to think about how people have been able to show their credit worthiness but in a way that's not the traditional way that has been looked at. So that's the first one. The second one is, can we find whether there are ways that we've been looking at borrowers that have embedded biases? So you think about some of the things, automated underwriting tools and other things, but the data that may be supporting them may have inherent biases in them. And how can we look at those things and determine whether there are ways to root out any bias? And are there tools that could allow us to do that? The third area is student loans. So the student lending problem, right, also relates back to the inability to build wealth, because some folks who've had the ability to build wealth through their homes have been able to help their kids go to college using that wealth. And so as a result, in the Black community and the Latino community, there are larger debt burdens for college because of that. And is there a way to rethink how we look at student loans? The fact that if you go to college, it gives you the ability to have more earning power down the road. You know, are there ways to rethink that whole area? And the fourth area is a little bit different. It goes back to this issue of sustainability. So when you think about the fact that sometimes people have just a short-term issue, right? They are owning their house, they're paying their mortgage, and something happens, right? I'm from the East Coast, sorry, but the boiler goes, and they need to heat their house. And what do? Can they heat their house, or do they pay the mortgage? And is there a way to think about some way to bridge that gap? I think that's a tough problem, but it's one we want to at least take a look at and see if there are ways to help people stay in their homes, bridge that short-term problem, and be able to continue their home ownership.
That's awesome. Bill, it looks like you're ready to speak.
Well, I'll take a stab at it. I really appreciate what you said, Teresa. That's great to hear. I totally appreciated Tyrone's presentation yesterday. I hope all of you got to hear that. It was revelatory to me, and it caused me to think about some of those systemic things that we have in place that may be a barrier that we just haven't realized. And those are the things I'm really thinking about when I'm thinking about not doing things like we've always done them. We need to take a good look at our systems and what we're doing. And is there something that we should change and do differently to bring more people into the home ownership arena, particularly thinking of home ownership? I think that we consciously do a good job of not being prejudiced and not resisting the opportunity to be diverse in our communities, in our housing communities. But is there something else that we should be looking at? And we need to invite different people to the table, have those discussions, and learn from that, and then make the changes that are needed. So I certainly would encourage that. We've been very at our agency anyway, we make a conscious effort to reach out to those diverse groups to make sure that we are extending our information to people who could benefit from it, and not just putting it out there on the airwaves for whoever comes in the door first. We have to be proactive about bringing those folks in.
And then to add to that, and I get known as the analogy guy around the office. Somebody, and I can't remember which presentation it was in, but they had the ladder of home ownership, or ladder of housing, I'm sorry. And at the top was home ownership, and at the bottom basically was homelessness. And I really like that. It's something that I've used. I talk about how the rungs of the ladder at the bottom need to be spaced not very far apart, because you've got to get somebody from homelessness stable to move them into other things. But I think that ladder that goes from A to Z is hugely important. And historically, we talk about that ladder, but there have been marginalized populations that we didn't even provide a ladder to. And when we did provide that ladder, you couldn't get from A to Z. You could only get from A to G. And at G, that's as far as you're going to go. So we need to make sure that that happens and that occurs, that the opportunities go from A to Z at the division. And I'm going to probably screw this up a little bit, but our Home is Possible team, which is our home ownership group, has been engaged with Make Homes Possible. Yeah, I'm getting a nodded yes. Team to expand minority ownership here in Clark County. And I'll go out on a limb here again, Nia, 25,000, and I'm getting a thumbs up, creating 25,000 new homeowners through that program in conjunction, again, with other partners throughout the county and the state.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I was going to give the division a shout out for that partnership. And also, of course, Nevada Partners. Ella is in the back there. Ella Garcia is part of the Make Homes Possible Coalition, City of Las Vegas. And I know there's a few others as well at the table. A really important initiative. So thank you. Well, that work is incredibly important, and it needs to be intentional, right? Again, or it's not going to happen. And that's the case also with affordable housing. So we're just about done. So I've asked the panelists to, in 60 seconds or less, so I did give this to them in advance so they could prep it, to kind of just address a couple questions. And we'll keep it simple because they have less than a minute. And actually on this one, we'll just go down the line. So on this one, I'll start here with you, Treasurer, and then Bill, you'll start the next one. How does that sound?
Okay.
So if you could wave the magic wand, what do you think is the one thing that will catalyze a transformation of Nevada's, or the most important thing, I suppose, because we know there's not one thing. So either the most important thing or one thing that will catalyze a transformation of Nevada's affordable housing progress?
Well, that's quite the question, Christine. And obviously I read the materials in advance. I think the largest thing for me would be an agreement, not just amongst the people in this room, but amongst leaders at the state, the federal, and the local levels, that we all need to be looking for ways to remove those friction points to housing, whether they're NIMBY rules, whether it's zoning issues, whether it's delays in time, whether it's figuring out how to do that last 100 meters of infrastructure, and just relentlessly push towards making sure that those homes can be available as quickly as possible.
Oh, I'm next. I love Tyrone's presentation and the concept of an app. If I could wave a magic wand, an app that would accomplish basically what Treasurer Conine pointed out. I wish there was some place we could put all the inputs of what goes into a particular unit, identify the places we can put them, and execute as quickly as possible. All those friction points, all those tough things in an app. If that were my magic wand, that's what I would do.
Yeah, the challenges are great, but this is a point of great economic and political history. I mean, we haven't seen anything like the opportunities before us since the administration of Franklin Roosevelt. When he ran for his fourth term, his platform was a second Bill of Rights, and on there was the right of housing that we started off with. This is a historic moment. We need to just take the advantage and move forward.
What I think would transform housing in Nevada would be increasing the number of vouchers that come to the state. We're approximately 2.3 million people living in Nevada. Chicago has around 2.3 million people. They get 50,000 vouchers. We get 18. So we've got to lead the charge on getting more vouchers into the state of Nevada. And we need to also start getting more project-based out there.
From my magic wand, from what I've picked up from this morning in what's in the Build Back Better Act are two things that's missing. And that's on the tax side. It's our bond cap mechanisms. It's reducing that 50% test to 25, expanding our bond cap authority. It's the making sure that the 9% LIHTC levels remain the same or increase. The QC, it was talked about earlier this morning. It's those little nuanced things that really drive the development of affordable housing. So if you think you're done, you're not. We still need those things to come true and come to fruition, hopefully to develop more affordable housing in Nevada.
I guess my magic wand would first make sure the bill passes and the money comes to the state. And then and then that we collaborate together to make sure we take advantage of this opportunity to use those funds to help the most people possible.
I've always wanted a magic wand. I've never got one, but if I could wave a magic wand for me, it would be to help every average Joe in the state really begin to comprehend the need for additional housing, for affordable housing, to eliminate issues like NIMBYism, so that when the city council considers an ordinance to allow accessory dwelling units, and my neighbor's thinking about putting one in, I'm not going to have a cow over that. It all adds to the solution. If we can think about ways to incentivize builders to bring in those affordable, accessible, attainable units, we need to pass ordinances in our local communities that would support that. So that'd be my magic wand, is eliminating NIMBYism and making everybody an advocate for housing.
Lisa.
Thank you. I think I certainly agree with everything that has been said. I would just add that I would like, if I had a magic wand, to eradicate the racial disparities in housing, and then really to continue this discussion. It's been such a great dialogue, and really better understand how we can work and partner together in the future.
And if I had a magic wand, I'd give you all a magic wand, because those are awesome responses. All right, next in 60 seconds or less. And Lisa, actually, we'll start with you if that's okay. What should we, as Nevada's housing stakeholders, all of us here in this room, online with you, expect from you for affordable housing? What is your role, you as a leader, you organizationally, or your sector?
Thank you. So I think that our biggest opportunity is, again, to be that partner with private and public, with everyone, to work on this issue. I think that we have the opportunity right now, for those who are not aware, that housing is considered a value-added service. So these are funds that we are providing to increase access to housing, affordable housing, in a variety of ways. So I mentioned some of them earlier. So whether it's pad mission with landlords, whether it's shared housing, bridge housing, partnerships with Clark County for HUD grants. So we really are looking and want to bring even more innovative solutions and partnerships. And that's our way to be able to assist with this affordable housing crisis here in Nevada.
I think I would add to that. I feel like I've been given a great sense of, or given a great responsibility in my position. We have the Nevada Rural Housing Authority, and because we have that great tool and the programs that we have through the authority, we have a great responsibility to use that tool to bring affordable housing and housing opportunities to all rural Nevadans. And so I think what you can expect from me, and what I will do my very best to deliver, is to do the best I can to make that happen. I've often said that the 20 units in Carlin, Nevada is just as important to them as 300 units is to Reno. And it's tough to get 20 units built somewhere in the frontier of Nevada, but we're going to do that. And we're going to do our best to make housing happen everywhere in Nevada as we have influence to do so.
I think for us, a lot of the focus is going to be bringing that targeted fund that I talked about to fruition for Nevada. And also making sure that we are working with the coalition to help build that capacity to use those funds going forward. We haven't really talked about it, but also continuing to support and think about how we can support tribal nations and help with the needs that are in those communities as well.
From the division standpoint, we view ourselves as the conduit, as the way to get all this funding that you're hearing about connected with the ideas that will be presented and hopefully be eligible for the funding and figure out what the best way is to, and to quote Governor Sisolak, invest those funds. That's how I view our role.
So by the end of the year, Nevada Hand will have over 900 units under construction, but we recognize it's a drop in the bucket compared to the actual need of 79,000 units. So we're going to be advocating for more resources for Nevada. We're going to be thinking a lot about how we can help the industry have sustainable products. So every one of us that are developing housing can have products that can last. Treasurer, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but you said it so nicely at the ARP hearing. You said something like, we really want to have one-time investments with long-term impact, something like that. And that's really the beauty of affordable housing.
I've already said that you're going to see the integration of economic development planning with housing planning and the priorities set out by the Sisolak administration. I will also tell you that as the EDA grant rolled in, we have committed funds in there to help our tribal partners apply for funds for resiliency in their community. And also in urban centers, some of that money will be spent on trying to deal with challenges in what's commonly called the SNCC area, the 4 poorest zip codes here in Las Vegas. We'll be focused in on that.
I think the private sector needs to be good faith partners, not just at the state government level, but at the local government level. In addition, private sector needs to be leaders in innovation, leaders in addressing the disparity, the racial disparity in housing, leaders in providing experience, leaders in providing supply in the market.
It's a good question. When I first ran for treasurer, I talked to a lot of former treasurers and they all warned me in sort of the same tone. Hey, be careful. Nobody knows what the treasurer does. And then I became treasurer and I realized no one knows what the treasurer does. And in that was an opportunity for us to lean in to places that hadn't been leaned in before and to try to elevate and make sure that we use the bully pulpit of the office as it is in order to make sure that the work that Steve and Bill and Audra and everyone else does every day had a place to be screamed about and praised, and that we could continue fighting for things that we knew were important long-term to the future of Nevada, right? And so I think, and I hope what you'll continue to see from your treasury is simply that blatant, prideful, loud support of the good work that you all do and trying to find ways that we can break down barriers and do more of it.
Wow, that's awesome. I don't know about you all, but I just want to give a thank you. And I love what I heard. And let's give a thank you to Lisa and our online audience too. So thank you so much. And I can tell you, we're still growing as a coalition, right? And I hear it here, and thank you, Teresa, Michael, me mentioning specifically the tribal communities, right? That's still outreach I am working on. I was so excited just in September. I built some great relationships and I'm working on building those conversations out. And I think that's what it's going to take, right, is continuing that work. But I do want to say what you can expect from the coalition and from me. I don't do the work you all do, and I'm here to support you. So you need to tell me if you don't like something, you say it. If you think we should be doing something, you can tell me that too. I may or may not agree. Now, I'm here for you to help you advance the work of affordable housing for all Nevadans, right? I care about point B, affordable housing for all Nevadans. And so I'm here to help you with that. But I want us to really feel inspired by today's message, by all the connections, by coming together that we've had. And I just want to, again, thank all of you. But I want to go through a couple thank yous here because this was a crazy thing to put together. I do want to say our planning team, as late as the end of July, Katie, right? We were actually still unsure that we were going to do this conference because we are in a pandemic and we didn't know if people were going to come. And I was not wanting to put together just a virtual meeting again, not because I don't love you all, and I do love seeing everybody's faces, but it was a difficult time even for us. And to pull it together, it took a team effort. I want to give a big shout out there to my newest team member, Amanda. Amanda, wave your hand. I'm hopeful that we see her after Nevada Day. She joined when I said we weren't sure at the end of July we were having it. She joined the coalition August 2nd. I'm like, awesome. So can you put this conference together? She actually connected me with Tyrone, and what a treat. So I was really grateful for that. I want to also thank all of our sponsors. Honestly, to put this together, it takes a lot. Particularly Anthem, Charles Schwab Bank, our presenting sponsors, Wells Fargo, but everybody who came to the table to make this happen. Thank you so much. Speakers, we had over 50 speakers, which was a lot of headshots, but they really added the content. Can we just give a round of applause for the content here this week? I mean, from land trusts, we heard, goodness gracious, I'm going to go down. We heard, but I talked, with the private sector, Bill, you mentioned, removing those barriers, to hear from California, what took them decades. What can we maybe carve off that makes sense in Nevada? I don't know that answer, but those are the things that we got to listen to and we get to ponder going forward. So really appreciative for all of that. And our vendors that came in and displayed, super grateful for that as well. Also, this wouldn't have happened without the Culinary Academy. The food was amazing. They recently remodeled, incredible. Nevada Partners, Ella, can you just give a big wave again? She's awesome. Nevada Partners is awesome. Their CEO, Monica, she couldn't be with us, but she would have if she could have. She had something come up that she couldn't join us, but otherwise she would have been here too. What an amazing organization. And I believe a recipient of an AHEAD award from Federal Home Loan Bank. Is that right? I think so. Yes, so I see a head nodding. Additionally, this one is crazy. Nick and your team, Empower Productions, crazy. So if you're wondering how I was sleeping at night, it was because Nick was like, yeah, we got this. And I'm like, really? Okay, awesome. Well, how's this going to happen? And oh, by the way, this is coming late. Can you handle that? And oh, somebody's now virtual. They can't travel. Can we do that? And he's like, okay, this isn't working. Okay, we got that. So I would highly recommend Empower Productions. Their customer service was fantastic, but their technical capacity was awesome to put together this hybrid option. And I hope everybody online feels that same way because it was wonderful. Our Zoom room monitors, Katie, Elena, and May, really helping the online audience stay connected. Thank you so much. The planning team I mentioned, yeah, they do deserve a round. They've been giving us the hand signals like no audio or things are good. So, and then they handled the questions, and our moderators, with the speakers, just fantastic. Our MC, she did have to leave for work, a work commitment that she couldn't get out of, but Ray Lathrop, one of my board members, awesome. And I know I don't have all my board members because I know Ray left, but can I have the Nevada Housing Coalition Board of Directors, if you're a member, can you just stand up real quick, please? I can tell you this is not a yes board. And I like that. I might have an idea and it gets debated and it becomes better. So really a lot of different perspectives. So I really also just want to thank all of you for coming today. And I hope that you're ready for work, because that to me was really what today was about. As you've heard from the treasurer and we've heard up here today, we are unprecedented times. The last 2 days have been incredible to hear, but we're here to get things done and move the needle. And that's with you. And I'm here for you. So I want us all to just feel encouraged to roll up our sleeves and really help bring affordable housing for all Nevadans. So thank you so much and safe travels.